A few years ago, Sarah and I loaded up our canoe and kayaks and headed out to Rafferty Dam for an afternoon on the water. When we got there, we were directed over to a truck that was owned by the Ministry of Environment, and there were a couple of people there who wanted to look at the canoe and the kayak, and they started asking questions about, have you had these watercraft in other waters? Have you been out of the province with them? Have you gone anywhere else other than the local area? And all sorts of things like that. Then they started inspecting them and looking for things that might have been transported from somewhere else. Here's the thing. They were concerned that sometimes organisms get attached to your watercraft, or they live in the live well of boats or something, and then they get transported from one body of water to the next, and these invasive species get brought in unintentionally, and then once they're in that body of water, they start growing and you can't get rid of them. So the Ministry of Environment's plan was very simple. They were going to try and stop the invasive species before it ever showed up. It's easier to keep it out than it is to get rid of it once it's there. If you go to any body of water right now, the government is really pushing that. Even at provincial and national parks right now, you can't even take floaties into the swimming area without having them inspected. They're really serious about it because it can be a really big deal when something that isn't supposed to be there is allowed in. What does that have to do with Scripture? Well, Ephesians chapter 4 says this in verse 26. In your anger do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. Speaking about anger and upsets, and those things are going to happen. We are going to get upset with each other. We are going to be angry with one another. But Scripture tells us that when we are angry, do not sin. And then it says, do not let the sun go down when you're angry. Do not allow your anger to just carry on. And then it says the most important part, do not give the devil a foothold. Here's the thing. It's sort of like those invasive species in the water that once you allow anger to sit with you, once you allow yourself to be upset with someone, once you allow that to go longer than 24 hours, once you allow that to be part of your perspective, then it just starts growing. And once it starts growing, then you can't stop it. You start being angry with someone and you just keep being angry with them, and you find more reasons to be angry with them, and then it just grows and grows and grows. Ephesians says don't do that. Don't allow that to happen. Stop it before it starts. In marriage counseling, I always give people the 24-hour rule. If something bad happens, if you're upset with your partner, you have 24 hours to report it to them. And the simple reasoning there is that if you don't deal with it right away, it's going to be harder to deal with later. 6 months down the road, a husband says to a wife, remember back then when you said this? Well, of course she doesn't remember. It was 6 months ago, and she wasn't upset about it. You were. So deal with things quickly. If you deal with things quickly, they're easier to deal with because you both remember what happened, and you deal with little things at a time instead of one big blow up at the end. The Bible can be really, really practical at times, and this is just one of those really practical things. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. Do not allow yourself to harbor bitterness towards people, because once you do, it just starts growing, and then it's almost impossible to get rid of. Stop it before it starts.